Coronavirus, Wuhan-400, biological weapons facilities in China and Russia and Iran. What do all of them have to do with each other? Let's find out. The coronavirus, as you all know, have claimed the lives of thousands of people worldwide. And so, in doing so, this disease is sparking speculation all across the globe. Was this actually transmitted in nature through bacteria infections, or was it actually created in a laboratory? We're going to get down to the bottom of this right now. But before we do that, please make sure you hit the subscribe button down below. I have done a lot of research to compose this video and all of its contents in factual format. So everyone that has speculations or have ideas about this particular subject is going to know more about it and basically get down to, better factual understanding of this disease and virus and where it came from. And so becoming aware of your surroundings and what's really going on. Here we go. We're going to see this guy here. He's got basically coronavirus ill, getting transported by these ambulance people here in China in hazmat suits. So let's go ahead and jump right into it, actually, and just go straight. I was actually reading a book, and this video is going to be particularly a little bit longer, but it has a lot of information. So sit back, relax, enjoy, maybe grab a cup of coffee, and just overview this content that I'm going to be showing you. I came across the book, and the book was keep in mind, you might want to write this down. The book was written in 1981 by an American author named Dean Koontz. The Eyes of Darkness. You may have seen this book, but this video is unlike anything else you've ever seen. So do not skip this video. Please, this video is going to be so in-depth and so detailed that you do not want to miss this. There's been a lot of speculations on this book, but nobody's been actually able to find out where this information all goes to. I have found the actual people that this book is talking about, and those people today. Okay? So, Dean Koontz, The Eyes of Darkness. I purchased this book for about $15, and I couldn't find it on Amazon. It was like $971. It was a crazy amount. And so I went online and I just purchased a PDF file version of it, and I was skimming through all the chapters, and I was like, okay. I was reading it, and then Watchers. So like there's Watchers, Midnight, The Bad Place, Phantoms, Night Chills, Darkfall. It's a fictional book, but in this book was the author. I was questioned with the question was the author actually putting in a secret message for the world to see, because basically he's telling the truth, but most people won't really read it or believe it because it's fictional. But what he says and who he talks about and the places that he mentions are fact. They really do exist. I did the research and I have that proof here today, and I will show it to you. But first, let me show you the part of the book. It's all the way, there's 202 pages in this book. So I'm going to go down to page 193. I believe I found it in. Let me refer back to my cell phone here where I took some images and snapshots. It is okay. So let me get this straightened out here. See, it's crazy how it's titled, and it's really how it shows up on the computer is different how it shows up on my cell phone. So let's get right into it. And it's actually the brain, okay. The brain that controls. Okay, sorry, 1 second. I'm gonna find it. Here we go. Okay, so in this book is really, really crazy. It is it's about a guy who, I mean, there's multiple people, but there's a kid named Danny, and Danny was basically walking around, contracted a virus, basically, and he had fevers, vomiting, swelling, stuff like that. You know, the sickness would come and then it would go, then it would come, then it would go. And so then he was admitted to a hospital. There is a guy that is traveling. So keep in mind, the story unfolds that there is a guy named that's traveling. His name's Carl Doomby. And Carl Doomby is a traveler and basically a traveling novelist. He writes articles about his traveling and travels and stuff like that. So getting down to it, it says... and this is going to be, I found it in the mobile device on page 193 of this book. And it says, in this one particular article, it says, and we're going to get right into what I promised you I was going to show you, to understand that Doomby, Carl Doomby, said you have to go back 20 months. It was around then that a Chinese scientist named, now write this down please, Li Chen, L-I, and then space, Chen, C-H-E-N, defected to the United States carrying a diskette record of China's most important and dangerous new biological weapon in a decade. They call this stuff Wuhan-400. Now keep in mind, this book was written in 1981. Right? 1981. And so, because it was developed at their rDNA labs outside of the city of Wuhan, and it was the 400th viable strain of man-made microorganisms created at that research center. Wuhan-400 is a perfect weapon. It afflicts only human beings, and no other living creature can carry it. And like syphilis, Wuhan-400 can't survive outside of a living human body for longer than a minute. This is super specific details about this virus. We were told originally that this came from a wet market, basically, where they have slaughtered animals, blood, flies, feces laying around, whatever, right? Okay, you're gonna get like E. coli and you know, fecal bacteria. This is not found in animals. This is not found in those type of situations. This is found in humans and human contact and human biological platforms. Okay, this is not animal platforms where basically you have a foundation, the virus grows on that foundation. It doesn't do that, and it's not transmitted from animals to humans. That's why we never heard about, oh, so-and-so ate at Chipotle and was infected with the coronavirus because they ate the meat or because they ate the chicken. This is popping up throughout the world, all over the place. And right now you have 50 deaths in Iran. We'll get to that in a minute. 50 deaths in Iran. You have over 100, more than 300 people infected in the United States right now because they've just transported 382 people on an airplane that were infected with the Wuhan virus and not telling anybody about it, and not really telling them the number and the amount of people to spark alert to the American citizens or to any other country. So they are definitely lying about the amount of people that are infected. So getting down to it, it says the Wuhan, so the development in the rDNA labs, so rDNA, you see that? DNA. rDNA. So they're mixing and messing around with DNA biological weapons. outside of the city of Wuhan, and it was the 400th liable strain of man-made microorganisms created at that research center. The Wuhan-400 is a perfect weapon. It afflicts only human beings, and no other living creature can carry it. And like syphilis, Wuhan-400 can't survive outside of a living human body for longer than a minute, which means it can't permanently contaminate objects or entire places. And we just had a doctor say exactly, that just came out in the news, I think yesterday, that the doctors and scientists are saying that now the virus doesn't like stay out there and where it's like 6 feet and 8 feet and 10 feet and it's just airborne. It's actually in close proximity from human to human. You can't just be sitting next to a dog that's infected with the Wuhan virus and then the dog sneezes and then you catch it. No, they're saying it is from human to human contact. This is not from animal to animal contact. That's why we never hear anything about animals to animals. They're lying to us. And we're just sitting there just believing everything that they say. We cannot do that. The Wuhan-400 is a perfect weapon. It afflicts only humans, okay? So, contaminate objects, so it can't permanently contaminate objects or entire places the way anthrax or other virulent microorganisms can. And when the host expires, person dies, the Wuhan virus, Wuhan-400, within himself perishes a short while later. So, the virus just disappears. It doesn't like continue to grow and continue to spread. It just perishes. It's meant to just kill and annihilate its victim, and that's it. And I'll get into all this after I'm done here. I just want to try to stick to the topic here. And when the host expires, the Wuhan-400 within him, it perishes a short while later. As soon as the temperature of the corpse drops below 86 degrees Fahrenheit, do you see the advantage of all this? And this isn't a book. This isn't a book that was published in 1981. And it's a fictional book, but the author was hiding a message. So Tina was too busy with Danny to think about what Carl Doomby had said, but Elliot knew what the scientist meant. If I understand you, the Chinese would use the Wuhan-400 to wipe out a city or a country, and then there wouldn't be any need for them to conduct a tricky and expensive decontamination before they moved in and took over the conquered territory. Exactly, Doomby said, and Wuhan-400 has other equally important advantages over the most biological agents. For one thing, you can become an infectious carrier only 4 hours after coming in contact with the virus. That's an incredibly short incubation period. Once infected, no one lives more than 24 hours. Most die within 12. It's worse than the Ebola virus in Africa. Ebola came out in 1976. Infinitely worse. Wuhan's 400's kill rate is 100%. No one is supposed to survive. They're not supposed to survive. The Chinese tested it on God knows how many political prisoners. Wow. So they were testing this virus on political prisoners prior to releasing it out to the public. They were never able to find an antibody or an antibiotic that was effective against it. The virus migrates to the brainstem, and there it begins secreting a toxin that literally eats away brain tissue like battery acid dissolving cheesecloth. It destroys the part of the brain that controls all the body's automatic functions. The victim simply ceases to have a pulse, functioning organ, or any urge to breathe. And that's the disease Danny survived. Elliot said. Yes, Doomby said. As far as we know, he's the only one who ever has. So, keep in mind, Carl Doomby, Dr. Scientist Li Chen, in the Wuhan-400. So keep those things in mind, and of course, Wuhan, China. Now, moving in, we're going to go ahead and find Dr. Li Chen. I left 2 voicemails for this guy. His phone number is right there, and he actually works at the let me see. Let me pull this down here a little bit. University of District of Columbia. And so he, let me pull this up here. University of District of Columbia. And so now it says here, in the Education Department of Computer Science and Information Technology. Wow. So this right here says that he fled from Wuhan, China to the United States. District of Columbia is in the United States. Not only is it in the District of United States, it's in Washington, D.C. What a coincidence. And he came here with the disket. How did he escape from Wuhan, China as an immigrant to come directly to the United States as a professor and maintain his credentials? Well, yeah, he basically had something that the United States wanted. And he's protected. So, yeah, here we go. The Education PhD University of Bedfordshire, renamed from the U of Luton, UK. So again, here, let me just get down to the real nitty gritty of this stuff. Teaching. He advanced in algorithm analysis, designed and analysis of algorithms, special topics, advanced algorithms in data science, computational geometry, senior projects, senior seminar. Books. Li Chen Z Su B, okay, mathematical problems in data science, spring year of 2015. So, getting down here, okay, so he earned his PhD at the University of Bedfordshire. He earned his MS of Computer Science at Utah State University. Functions based on fuzzy neural networks and the application to image processing. So the brain and the functions of the brain and neural networks. He earned his Bachelor's of Science of Computer Science in Wuhan University in Wuhan, China in 1982. Again, this book was made in 1981. He earned his Bachelor's of Science in 1982 in dissertation matrix representation of some combinatorial problems and their applications. So he worked on computational geometry. So he was basically the person that was monitoring all the computations of these diseases, of their interactions, of how they were working, and he took a diskette. Okay? Again, going back to the book where it says that right here, Dr. Li Chen defected to the United States carrying a diskette record of China's most important and dangerous new biological weapon in a decade. Okay? So, the diskette was the memory card. When you're a bachelor's of science in computer science, would you not have access to a diskette or a memory card? Of course you would. Yeah. And it says exactly right here, Wuhan University in Wuhan, China in 1982. This book was made in 1981. Very, very, I mean, it's all connecting. Are you getting this? So this guy here, Li Chen, PhD, now a PhD, fled Wuhan to come to the United States. There's a lot of books about him and stuff like that. So here we go. China wasn't the original villain in the book predicting coronavirus outbreak. It was Russia. Here we go. Another conspiracy. Dean Koontz, The Eyes of Darkness, originally contained detail of a man-made virus called the Gorky-400 from Russia's city of Gorky. The change to Wuhan came when the book was released in hardback under Koontz's own name in 1989 at the end of the Cold War. So, basically, what happened was it originally came from Russia. And the way it came from Russia, well, we're going to get to that story now. So, basically, we're going from most current to back in the future of where it originally came. Most current, it was adopted and came from Wuhan, China, biological weapons facility in Wuhan, China. We've already got that down. Li Chen was part of that, working with that. Prior to Li Chen coming to Wuhan, China, and bringing that virus and that virus diskette, that memory card, to the United States, it was actually, before all that stuff, it was created in Russia. We're going to go ahead and get right into that. So, Gorky in Russia. This is Russia, and so Nizhny Novgorod. So yeah, this is Gorky. Sorry, right there, Gorky. Now, I can't really understand where these State Academy, it says there, State Academy. There is somewhere in this area, and maybe someone that knows how to speak Russian could actually identify where there might be a biological weapons facility at, and update the comments down below. I would appreciate that. And so, just for future reference, and so we could actually try to find out where there's a biological weapons facility here and connect that with what's going on. So the Gorky in Russia is right there. We're going to go ahead and get right. We're going to come back and talk about Gorky here in a minute. But next tab is going to be Carl Doomby. When I searched on Google, I could not find anybody named Carl Doomby. And it just basically referred back to the book saying, well, there's a fictional character named Carl Doomby. And nothing really exists about Carl Doomby. It's just a book. But when I went to Bing, Carl Doombeck, not Doomby, but Carl Doombeck, came up here. And why does it say Carl Doombeck and not Doomby? Well, I specifically typed in Carl Doomby, and it says coronavirus was early predicted. Coronavirus was early predicted in 1981 in a novel, and coronavirus was early predicted in 1981 novel. So now, when we hear about this novel coronavirus, guess what? Because it was predicted in the novel that this would be the coronavirus. Why do you think people call it the novel coronavirus? Let's go ahead and find out. Real fast, off topic. Google coronavirus. And so we're going to go to, novel. We're just going to go to novel. Novel coronavirus. So again here, novel coronavirus cases top 80,000 as markets plunge on pandemic fears. 2019 novel coronavirus. You see the word novel? Novel came from the novel written here by Dean Koontz. 202 pages of it. And so, now moving in, this guy here, I could not find Carl Doomby, but I did find Carl Doombeck. And so, going through his profile, it says, I'm a boomer who loves to travel and talk about it. The book says that he's a traveler and loves to talk about his traveling. And basically what he saw in the virus, he was translating that to Tina, who is also mentioned in the book but doesn't have a last name. So he goes and he's on a Twitter account, he has a LinkedIn account, and he basically talks about Qatar Airways named world's best in 2017, Delta Airlines selling Delta One suites and premium select seats, corporate governances. Expert Ryan Milberg is calling for a complete overhaul of the airline industry. Friday Frump, U.S. airlines manipulate marketing managing. So he's into traveling. He talks about Wonk's Corner, but he's not talking about the coronavirus. He talks about everything else, and this is very up-to-date information. And he just recently posted in November 21st, bad move, Kroger. charging customers to get cash. Seriously? You clearly did not have a PR person at the table. They have jumped on the horrible optics, and your bean counters missed. I'll be moving more grocery biz to Winco Foods, gas in Costco, and wine to Total Wine. So, he's obviously in ties with some major brand labels and businesses. So, yeah, I mean, he's writing articles and putting more grocery business towards Costco. He is an influencer, and that's what he was in the book too as well. So Carl Dombeck is Carl Dombey. So here we go. Now, Carl Dombey and how, so we're going back to Gorky, Russia. Gorky, Russia was named after this guy here, Maxim Gorky. Who was Maxim Gorky? Well, Maxim Gorky, there's some parts that are Russian and some parts that are English, so I'm going to try to read the only English parts. So the translations are, he was born 1868, and died June 18th, 1936. Primarily known as Maxim Gorky, was a Russian and Soviet writer, a founder of the socialist realism literary method, and political activist. He was also a 5-time nominee for the Nobel Prize in Literature. Around 15 years before success as a writer, he frequently changed jobs and roamed across Russia Empire. These experiences would later influence his writing. Gorky's most famous works were The Lower Depths, 26 Men and a Girl in 1899, and The Song of Stormy Petrel in 1901, My Childhood in 1913 to 1914, and then the book called Mother, 1906, and then Summer Folk in 1904, and The Children of the Sun in 1905. He had an association with the fellow Russian writers Leo Tolstoy and Anton Chekhov. Gorky would later mention them in his memoirs. So, going down and just kind of briefly going through it so this video doesn't drag out for hours and hours. He was basically, he was kicked out of Russia because of the stories that he would report on and the stuff that he would come across. But little did he know that later on that he would come across the patents for a virus and actually be working very closely with a Nazi regime leader, none other than Joseph Stalin. And so Capri later, from 1906 to 1913, Gorky lived on the island of Capri in southern Italy, partly for health reasons and partly to escape the increasingly repressive atmosphere in Russia. He continued to support the work of Russian social democracy, especially the Bolsheviks, and invited Anatoly Lenarsky to stay with him on Capri. The two men had worked together on Literaturny Raspad, which appeared in 1908. It was during this period that Gorky, along with Lenarsky, sorry if I'm pronouncing that wrong, Bagdanov, and Vladimir Bazarov, developed the idea of Encyclopedia of Russia History as a socialist version of Diderot's Encyclopedia. During a visit in Switzerland, Gorky met Lenin, who he charged spent an inordinate amount of his time to feuding with other revolutionaries, writing, "He looked awful. Even his tongue seemed to have turned gray." Despite his atheism, Gorky was not materialist. Most controversially, he articulated, along with a few other maverick Bolsheviks, a philosophy he called God building, which sought to recapture the power of myth for the revolution and create a religious atheism that placed a collective humanity where God had been and was imbued with passion, wonderment, moral certainty, and promise to deliverance from evil, suffering, and even death. Though God building was ridiculed by Lenin, Gorky retained his belief that culture, the moral and spiritual awareness of the value and potential of human self, would be more critical to the revolution's success than political or economic arrangements. So he was exiled from Russia, not once but twice, and so his death, while the increase, so basically kind of going back here a little bit more, so conflicts with Stalinists. By the summer of 1934, Gorky was increasingly in conflict with the Soviet authorities. He was angry that Leopold Averbach, whom he regarded as a protege, was denied a role in the newly created Writers' Union, and objected the interference by the Central Committee staff in the affairs of the Union. This conflict, which may have been exacerbated by Gorky's despair over the early death of his son Max, came to head just before the first Writers' Congress in August 1934. On August 11th, he submitted an article of publications to Pravda, which attacked the deputy head of the press department, Pavel Yudin, which such interpret language that Stalin's deputy, so Stalin, Joseph Stalin, deputy, was ordered to suppression, but his forced and relent other hundreds of copies of articles circulated by hand. Gorky's draft on the keynote speech he was due to give at the Congress caused such consternation when he submitted it to the Politburo that 4 of its leading members, Kaganovic, I can't even pronounce their names, were sent to persuade him to make changes. So you can go ahead and check that out. It's right here on, you just type in Maxim Gorky, and basically it goes into saying that Maxim Gorky had a real connection with Joseph Stalin. And in connection with Joseph Stalin, and what Joseph Stalin was doing was they basically had this virus back to testing on humans too in that time. And so the Gorky Stalin, and what this connection has with Gorky virus, Gorky-400, was basically named from this virus that Stalin had given to Gorky, or that Gorky had actually taken, very similar to what Li Chen was doing. Gorky had the records and the data because he was a writer. He had the records and the data, and he came across it, and he was to make a story about the Gorky virus. And so when he made the story about Gorky virus, he also came across viruses and how these viruses interact with one another, and he was supposed to write a thesis on what he found as a story writer during that time. And so the virus became known as the Gorky-400, as he was the one that had the initial information given to him by Joseph Stalin. And Joseph Stalin, again, used it in those Nazi concentration camps on Jewish captives. And so the virus now has been adopted by Chinese government and Iran government, and remains in Russia as Gorky-400 for biological weapons testing. Now, Joseph Stalin, if you don't know who Joseph Stalin was, Joseph Stalin, born 1878 and died March 5th, 1953, was a Georgian revolutionary and Soviet politician who led the Soviet Union from the mid-1920s until 1953 as the General Secretary of the Communist Party of the Soviet Union. The premier of the Soviet Union, despite initially governing the Soviet Union as part of the collective leadership, he eventually consolidated power to become the country's de facto dictator. By 1930s, a communist ideological committed to the Leninist interpretation of Marxism. Stalin. So Marxism is going back to that atheism type philosophy. Stalin formalized these ideas of Marxisms and Leninisms, while his own policies are known as Stalinism. Born to a poor family in Gori, very similar and close to Gorky, Russia, in the Russia Empire, now Georgia, Russia, Stalin joined the Marxists, Russian Social Democratic Labor Party as a youth. He edited the party's newspaper. So, again, Joseph Stalin editing and writing newspapers for the Russian Empire. And then you also have Maxim Gorky, who is also an editor and newspaper publisher. It would not be uncommon for these two to actually meet at one point in time. So, and create some type of friendship. So now, moving on, the China appoints its top military biological warfare expert to take over a secretive. Okay, sorry. I don't know why that keeps popping. A secretive virus lab in Wuhan, sparking conspiracy theories that coronavirus outbreak is linked to Beijing's army. Shen Wei, 54, has reportedly taken the helm of the Wuhan Institute of Virology. Okay, her appointment prompted claims that the classified lab is run by the army. One theory suggests Beijing could be making bioweapons in the Wuhan lab. It alleges the virus could have been created there and leaked by accident. Nah, by accident, no. A director at the lab has denied the allegations and called for an investigation. Of course they're going to deny the allegations because they don't want to get caught. That's just the bottom line. China has reportedly appointed its military biological weapons expert to take over a secretive virus laboratory in Wuhan after the outbreak of a new coronavirus, sparking conspiracy theories that the health crisis could be connected to the army. Shen Wei, a major general of the People's Liberation Army, was flown into Wuhan by the central government late last month before officially taking the helm of Wuhan Institute of Virology, according to a report. The 54-year-old designation prompted some people to speculate that the epidemic could have been spawned in a little-known lab and that the lab is run by Beijing's military. Yes, it was. So now, here we go. The photo above is released by China's Xinhua News Agency. A medical worker writes their colleagues' names on a protective suit to aid in identification as they work at Zhongnan Hospital of Wuhan University in Wuhan in central China's Hubei province. The deadly animal virus epidemic, they're saying it's a deadly animal virus. Well, how come nobody's getting it from animals? How come it didn't just stop there? Why is it continuing from human to human? And it's so contagious from human to human. And how come nobody's getting it from the meat? I mean, you know how much meat we get from China? Yeah, a lot of meat. But we're not getting it from their meat. None of the meat's contaminated. How did Iran just pop up with meat contaminated there? How did the cruise ship with over 4,000 people get contaminated? It wasn't the food that they were eating. It was people, human to human interaction. It didn't start with animals. It started in a laboratory tested on political prisoners. Okay? The political prisoners were tested with this disease. And then they were released out into the public to infect other people. They knew what they were doing. They have been testing on humans for a long time. Now, China is, keep in mind, China's economy is actually going down the drain. They're not as rich as they say they are, as most people would think that they are. They are a communist country, and they do, in fact, with their trade wars and how they've been stealing money from other countries in trading stuff like that, they definitely are not on the nice list, right? So it would only make sense that China is planning to infect large amounts of people before they start to. I mean, it would be a lot easier to infect people and infect continents and countries while the countries' governments are focused on healing and helping their own people. China would move in, dominating countries, outbreaking into. Think of this. You got a virus. You got the Wuhan virus. You're dying, right? Next, you get a cyber attack. Your account, all your identity stolen. Next, what would it be next? I'd hate to say that, it turns into a physical, all-out World War III. And China would be the dominant force. China, Russia, and Iran would be the dominant force. And we've already gone over that, and so what that book also says is that. Sorry, let me go back to that one spot here. I'm still looking for it. 1 second. So also in this book, it does cover. Here we go. Sorry, I just now found it. R&R. So Bollinger snapped. He would just right off the rails. Dombey said, obviously embarrassed that one of his colleagues would lose control of himself under those circumstances. Dombey began to pace as he walked. Bollinger knew how fast Wuhan-400 claims its victims, and he just panicked, flipped out. Apparently, he convinced himself he could run away from the infection. God knows that exactly what he tried to do. He didn't turn in alarm. He walked out of the lab, went to his quarters, dressed in outdoor clothes, and left the complex. He wasn't scheduled for R&R, and on the spur of the moment, he wouldn't think of an excuse to sign out of the Range Rovers. So he tried to escape on foot. He told the guards he was going to snowshoeing for a couple hours. That's something a lot of us do during the winter. It's good exercise, and it gets you out of this hole in the ground for a while. Anyway, Bollinger wasn't interested in exercise. He tucked the snowshoes under his arm and took off. Let's see if I can get down here to this portion where I saw it says somewhere in here that Iran, Libya, and Russia and China are all into it together. I've been reading all this stuff for a couple days now, and so yeah, my eyes kind of burn. Yeah, Doomey said it must have reached the scouts 500 hours, and he was infected. By then, he was worn out. He'd used up most of his physical reserves getting out of the lab reservation, and he was also beginning to feel some of the early symptoms of Wuhan-400. Dizziness, mild nausea. The scoutmaster had parked the expedition minibus on a lay-by about 1.5 miles into the woods. And so, moving up here. So it says, while Tina worked with Danny Elliott, questioned Carl Doomby, what goes on in this place? Military research? He says, yes, Doomby said. Strictly biological weapons, biological and chemical, recombinant DNA experiments at any one time. We have 30 to 40 projects underway, he said. I thought the U.S. got out of chemical and biological weapons race a long time ago. For the public record, we did, Doomby said. It made the politicians... Again, Doomby, this guy here, Doombeck, Carl Doombeck, is writing about political stuff. And so, now going on here, says, for the public record we did, Doomby said, it made politicians look good, but in reality, the work goes on. It has to. This is the only facility of its kind we have. The Chinese have 3 like it. The Russians... they're now supposed to be our new friends, but they keep developing bacteriological weapons, new and more virulent strains of viruses, because they're broke. And this is a lot cheaper than other weapon systems. Iraq has a big biochem warfare project in Libya, and God knows who else. Lots of people out there in the rest of the world, they believe in chemical and biological warfare. They don't see anything immoral about it. If they felt they had some terrific new bug that we didn't know about, something against which we couldn't retaliate in kind, they'd use it on us. There you have it. There you have it. Again, Iraq has a big biochem warfare projects, and Libya, and God knows who else. So Russia has it in Gorky. In Gorky, Russia is where it's located. In Libya, not really quite sure where it would be at. Probably just outside of some major large city, probably where one of those facilities would be at. And I hope that this video does spark governmental and federal interaction, and that the governments and military do look into this video, because it has a lot of information in this book, and that it could spark an investigation to find out if these facilities actually also did have in Iraq facility biochem facilities, if these facilities actually also do have the virus known as the Wuhan-400 or coronavirus. Because if they do, then this book is 100%, and those facilities need to be shut down, because that's exactly what they're trying to do. Shut down continents and countries with viruses and plagues. So the Iraq biological weapons program, Saddam Hussein, 1937 born, died 2006, initiated an extensive biological weapons BW program in Iraq in the early 1980s in a violation of the Biological Weapons Convention BWC of 1972. Details of the BW program, along with a chemical weapons program, surfaced only in the wake of the Gulf War in 1990 to 1991, following investigations conducted by the United Nations Specimen Commission, a special commission, UNSCOM, which had been charged with the post-war disarmament of Saddam's Iraq. By the end of the war, program scientists have investigated the BW potential of 5 bacterial strains, 1 fungal strain, and 5 types of viruses, and 4 toxins. Of these, 3 anthrax, botulinum, and aflatoxin had processed a weaponization for development. Because the UN disarmament program that followed the war, more is known today about one secret bioweapons program in Iraq that of any other nation. So, yeah, that's pretty much it. For those of you that also want to stick around for the special portion of this, and that's going to be end of times prophecy, right? We know in the Bible it's going to say that plagues, viruses, pestilence are going to plague the world before Jesus comes again. And so I want to kind of go over that real fast. Not a lot of people are aware that there is a that there are, what are those little bugs? I forgot what those little bugs are called. Locusts, that's right. Locusts in South Africa. Check this out. So skies go black in Africa as the worst plague in decades. Locust invasions in the biggest in Ethiopia and Somalia in 25 years, and the biggest in Kenya in 70 years. A changing climate has contributed to the exceptional breeding conditions. So, somebody running away from all those flies. This is huge. You can actually see this image here. I can't enlarge it, but it's scary. Black cloud covering a whole mountainside, and they do about $70 million is needed to step up the aerial pesticide spraying, the only effective way to combat them. But you can't stop them because these locusts are spreading and they're eating up all the vegetation. You can say global warming all you want, but the fact remains Jesus is coming, and it is going to be the end of the world here pretty soon. Because people are becoming more selfish into selfish needs of one another. They're becoming more into fashion, more into jewelry, more into what's on TV, what other people are doing with their lives, what's going on with other people. And those people that are, seeking attention are the ones that are going to be the ones that are selfish, and the ones that basically want me type of scenarios and me type of situations, and no one else matters. So then that follows in along with more and more lies about who people are when they're really not. Then you got sodomy, okay, guys with guys, girls with girls. Sodom and Gomorrah were torn down because of that. Idol worshiping. You got a lot of different religions out there that are worshiping idols. Idols are also not just statues, but they're also things that you put before God, and those idols turn into like cars. If you're focusing on your car more than you're focusing on God, guess what? That car is now an idol. You're focusing on making more money than focusing on God. Guess what? Your making money is more important than God, and that becomes an idol. So put God first. Because God needs to be your idol, okay? And then everything else second, third, and fourth, and fifth. The second portion of the priority list is going to be your wife, your spouse, your husband. Those are going to be the second priority. Other than that, just repent, because that's what God says, is that if you repent and you seek God with all your heart, with no doubt that you're seeking God with all your heart, and you're asking for forgiveness, and you're asking for His protection from these viruses and from these pestilence, and you ask God to save you and write your name in the book of life, and then you repent, and then you get baptized. Being baptized is being born again. You can only get into heaven if you're born again and you repent of your sins. So again, getting into heaven, that's what God says, that if you do those things and you do His will, He will heal your land. He will heal. He will take away these viruses. He will take away these plagues, and we will live peacefully and happily. But majority of people are not going to do that, and those people are going to be left behind. Those people are going to be suffering. Just make sure that you're not one of them. Please make sure that you're not one of them. Turn away from your sins, repent, be born again, and let's keep this stuff from happening, okay? I hope that you have came to realize that this virus was made in a laboratory, that there is no virus to human and animal no animals were involved in this at all. It was actually created in the laboratory in Wuhan, China, just blocks from the actual epicenter of the virus. So if we go to Wuhan Virology, I'm not even spelling that wrong, Institute. So yeah, we can actually go here and we can say, so let me see the maps. It'll take me right there. So the restaurant, let me see where my pin is at here. Let me see, maybe I can put it right here. Okay, you see this right here? This is the restaurant. Okay, you see that? And this is the Virology Institute. How many blocks away is that? Let's count. 1, 2 blocks down. Okay, here's a street here, and this is the main entrance for the Wuhan facility. And then here's the food court. It's called Kongyi Restaurant and Anju Road in Zhenhu Village. Wow. Guess what? And then there's also another restaurant right here. Sichuan Flavor Home Cooking, right? So, if there's no other place around here to blame it on, they're not going to blame it on the facility. They're going to blame it on, contaminated foods. Seems like a perfect lie and a perfect strategy to cover up. Yeah. But pay attention to what's really happening. People all over the world are getting infected, and those people are spreading the viruses from human to human interaction and not from animals. Okay, you don't hear about people, so and so was infected with the Wuhan virus and gave it to their dog, and now their dog's dead. No. Or so and so's golden retriever or chihuahua, coughed in their face when they were hugging them, and now that person's got a Wuhan virus. No. You can't keep lying. Okay. You got to face the truth sooner or later, and China needs to be held responsible for this. Iran needs to be held responsible for this. Libya needs to be held responsible for this, and there needs to be a major investigation. And I hope that you will share this video with all your friends and family. Get the word out. Subscribe to this YouTube channel, because I got a lot of information coming and a lot of random content. Please stay tuned. Sometimes I'll put out content that you may not like, but there may be something that you do like. So just bear with me as my channel grows, and I'll be more amped to basically specifically focusing on one direction. Thanks for watching. Until next time, Last Viking TV is out. Please subscribe and share. Thank you.